Hello, and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the Hammercast. I am your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and joining me today is none other than legendary Jedd Johnson. He's a multiple world record holder in grip training, multi-time national and North American champion, and just all-around smart guy. I know back in the day, too, if I'm not mistaken, he was also involved with RKC with Pavel, and he was one of their advisors or something along those lines. I've been following him for over 10 years. I've gotten a number of his amazing info products, such as Homemade Strength 2, I think is what it was called. Absolutely love that. Helped really transform my grip strength from weak to freak. And we're going to talk all about grip training, why it is very important for your kettlebell and calisthenics training, as well as your health and longevity in general. And it's going to be a good old time. Now, before we begin, I always like to remind my audience, if this is the first time you are hearing my soothing Wolverine's purr of a voice, and soon to be Jed's as well, I highly recommend that you get my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge. As the name implies, it only takes 9 minutes to do. What's very nice is it can be done in conjunction with your regular training. That's how it's designed to be done, as it only focuses on gait pattern related movements as they pertain to strength. So like crawling, loaded carries, stuff like that. So a lot of people reach out and tell me that it helped them feel more resilient, increased their strength in, let's say, their squats, their presses, their pull-ups, things like that. And it's free, so you can't really argue with that. Go to 9minutechallenge.com. You can get your very own copy. That's the number 9minutechallenge.com. And it's all yours. So without further ado, Jed, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it. And I totally forgot that I was involved in RKC and the board of directors.
Yeah,
So thank you for the reminder. But yes,
you were
that
very
is true.
welcome. Yeah, no, I remember, again, back in the day, I was like a huge fanboy of like all stuff going on in RKC, because that was kind of like my origin, let's say, was with kettlebells. And I still love kettlebells, still train with kettlebells. And back then it was almost, I mean, you probably remember this, it was very much like almost, I hesitate to say the word cult-like because it kind of gives a negative connotation, but I think it's a fair thing to say. And we're not talking like Scientology kind of cult. We're talking about something where people just really, really latched onto it and were obsessed. And so anybody who was considered good enough to be on the board of directors, I was like, okay, I got to follow this person. I got to, see what they're all about. And it just came to me as I was introducing you that I totally had forgotten about that until I remember having seen your name.
Yeah,
And also, yeah, I saw you in the old RKC forums back in the day as well, before the proliferation of social media. There were forums everywhere. So you've been all
I
over
was
the
on.
place.
I used to be on every forum back in the day. Every forum.
Yeah,
So
it
yeah,
was easier to do then, because now it's like forums are basically Facebook groups, and it's so easy to create a Facebook group that you just can't participate in all that many, because it's just
yeah,
all over the place.
yeah.
But yeah, you've had a long and storied history. You've created a lot of really impressive programs. And what I think is especially interesting is how you became this world-renowned grip strength expert. And a lot of us think of grip strength, I think, is just something you either have or you don't have. We think of like, yeah, my dad's got that old man strength, and he's got a really strong grip, but nobody really thinks about developing it. And it's rarely the first thing people think about when they want to get started training. So what I'm curious about for you is like, what is your origin story in general? How did you get into physical fitness? Were you always physically active, or was that something that you discovered later in life?
I was pretty much always active. I played sports as a kid, and my main sport was baseball. And during the warm months, we were always playing. We were always playing. My dad was adamant about getting extra work in. We'd go out in the yard. I had a mound in the yard, a home plate, a backstop. Later on, I had a batting cage in my yard. It was life. It was quite important all the time. And I do things like push-ups and jumping rope and stuff like that. I got an interest in weight training and stuff like that from watching pro wrestling when I was a kid. Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, stuff like that. And I like to say that I pretty much invented accommodating resistance and stuff like that. I just didn't give it that name because I used to do push-ups with like weights on my back. My daughter would or excuse me, my sister would take a laundry basket and put weights, not weights, but books in the basket while I was doing push-ups. And she would put, I'd do like 5 push-ups, she'd put another book, 5 push-ups, do another book. So in a way, I kind of came up with that. But
Nice.
um, it's just, it was always an interest of mine to be in good shape and do different things. I had a pull-up bar at my house, so I was able to do pull-ups. I was like the pull-up champion when I was 12. Yeah, so the interest got started really early. And then when I was in baseball in high school, I started doing weight training in order to get better at baseball. By then, I was also playing basketball, so it helped with basketball too. And then I really took an interest in bodybuilding, especially, and really devoting a lot of time to it when I stopped playing baseball at college. I got a really bad groin injury my freshman year, and it stuck with me for a year and a half. And by the end of that year and a half, my arm was totally destroyed. I couldn't sit in class at my desk with my elbow on the desk like this because this whole area of my arm was just totally wrecked. And to this day, my shoulders are all messed up, and I blame it on baseball. Um, and that I was basically overthrowing with my arm because I couldn't generate any power with my legs. So I got into really a bodybuilding emphasis. I met Jim Smith, who I ran Diesel Crew with for several years, and he introduced me to things that like concepts that Louis Simmons was putting out back in the day. So we started doing powerlifting. We started doing accommodating resistance with not like the jump stretch bands at the time, but we bought this giant spool of rubber tubing, and we used that for the accommodating resistance. We got into Olympic weightlifting. I found out about like Vasily Alexiev and the stories about him. So I had a picture of him in my wallet. Um, and we did a couple years of dedicated training on Olympic lifting, and then we found out about a strongman contest that was going on in Massachusetts. So we started training strongman, odd object training, and things like that. So my first competition was in 2003 up in Massachusetts at Total Performance Sports. It was up near Boston. And around that time, I also found out, so that was going to be in August. So whenever we started training for that, I also found out about a grip contest that was going to take place in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. So I started training for that too because strongman was very, very interesting to me. I really wanted to do well in it, and I figured the grip stuff would help me out. So grip started out as something that I could do to support my strongman stuff. And then I did strongman until 2006. I accumulated a bunch of back injuries, and I really couldn't do that to a high degree anymore. I got pretty good in 2005. I won like it was this contest where you could win all this cash. I won like $1,000 at this contest, and the only dude that beat me was Don Pope. And that year, either that year or the following year, he was like a finalist in World's Strongest Man.
Wow.
So I was like 255, 260, and I was competitive against all these other guys that were clearly on performance enhancing drugs. And I did, pretty well against Don Pope. He beat me in all the events, but there were several of them that I was second place right behind him.
Wow.
And unfortunately, that was 2005. By 2006, I was just wrecked. I was just totally wrecked. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was serious injuries before you know it. I just couldn't do it at that intensity anymore. So I got out of strongman competitions, and I just stuck with grip competitions after that.
Now, when you moved over to grip competitions in particular, did you find that generally speaking, it was easier on the body because, the loads are not going to be as heavy because it's more focused on just what you can hold, but also because you kind of have to sometimes move your body in different ways than you would, let's say, for like a really heavy deadlift. With a really heavy deadlift that you do over and over and over again, you can kind of get this like excessive pattern overload. But and keeping your back really rigid, all this other stuff. But one thing I notice a lot with the grip guys is that when they're doing deadlifts with a grip emphasis, there has a tendency to be more like, let's say, leeway in the position of the back. Did you find that that was helpful when you started doing stuff like that in terms of how your back felt and other parts of the body?
Well, when I first started, like I was so messed up that like I was getting hurt doing grip lifts too. But I didn't have the understanding nor the mentality I needed in order to prevent injuries. It was more like get as strong as possible, get as big as possible. I wasn't worried about my weight. I was severely overweight. I got up to like 270, 280 easy. Probably in 2012, I even got as high as I'm sure I was close to 300 pounds.
Wow.
But you're bringing up a good point. A lot of the grip lifts that we do, especially the one-handed lifts, when I see people doing them, and unfortunately it's a lot of times kettlebell people, they're like, they line up with like the perfect form and then they lift it and they snap their hips and they lock out and you can see like their butt jiggle and stuff. They're locking out so hard. And that is so unnecessary in grip. When you're accelerating through a movement like that, it actually takes away from how well you can hold on to a device. So a lot of times I tell people like, I understand what you're doing there. And for like RKC or strong first, then you want to do that. But for grip, that is totally unnecessary. So I kind of have to like work them away from that. And there's plenty of stuff where I'm sure when I'm lifting, my back is totally rounded and it looks like I'm going to blow my spine right out of my back. But these days I have created my core so it's so strong and developed that kind of stuff does not bother me. In fact, I took 2 years off of deadlifting. I did not deadlift and I probably didn't squat much more than like some goblet squats that whole entire time. But I was working on planks, side planks, dragon flags. Like I was able to do dragon flags legit, like strict from the bottom up after like 2 weeks of trying them because my core was so strong. And it came from doing those statics, but also the grip stuff. You're lifting with one arm and you're creating tremendous force to stabilize everything. My lats were so strong and everything like that the dragon flag was easy. And then after those 2 years, it did not take me very long at all to get right back to like a 500-pound double overhand deadlift once I started trying. And it goes to show you don't need to necessarily do those exact movements all the time if you're creating force that is, transferable to that movement.
Yeah, one thing I try to tell the people who follow me is not to fall into the trap of saying, okay, well, I have to only do these moves because they're essential or they're fundamental or what have you. You really want to get strong in a wide variety of ways and in a wide variety of angles, because ultimately what is going to end up happening is that if you kind of like paint yourself into a corner, you're not even going to be very comfortable in that corner. You're going to be very, very restricted, and it's going to reflect in how you perform. And so people are always surprised that they can come back to something that they haven't done in a while and still perform it very well when they start doing other things that are like filling in the blanks in their training that they never would have guessed. And I think grip training provides a really great window into this, because I don't know of anybody who says, I really don't care if my grip is strong. People like want a strong grip. They just think, okay, well, maybe I just need to do more swings or hang onto a pull-up bar longer, or, things like that. And those things can certainly contribute, but after a certain amount of time, it's really only going to be adding, maybe some endurance or some particularly some activity specific endurance that may not have that much of a carryover. But as you're talking about, some of the stuff that you were training and some of the other stuff that you were doing really prepared you to excel even at movements that most people really have to put a lot of time into. Like you mentioned, a double overhand deadlift with 500 pounds, which for people who don't understand, typically you'll see people doing a deadlift with a mixed grip because it helps to sort of overcome the rotation in a bar on the barbell. But if you're doing double overhand, you can't mitigate that rotation. You just have to deal with it. So that's incredibly strong. And I would say even more impressive than just a standard mixed grip deadlift. Now, when you started doing grip training stuff, were you anticipating that you were going to just end up with all these cool things that happen later, or is that just kind of a happy accident?
A little bit of both. So the first contest that I did involved steel bending.
Mm,
So I knew I was going to have to do that. And once I found out that people were actually training their grip in a specialized way, I soon found out that people could rip decks of cards, phone books, and the classic old time strongman feats,
mhm,
which I thought prior to that, I thought that was all just trickery. I thought it was like a doctored deck of cards. It was like
mhm.
pro wrestling, everything's gimmicked and there's a way to set it up ahead of time so that it's very, very easy. I didn't realize that you could actually train to do that legitimately. So once I found out that you could do that legitimately, that became one of my main focuses at the beginning was tearing a deck of cards, also tearing a phone book. So I wanted to be able to do that whenever I wanted to, because at the time I was going to bars a lot and partying and stuff like that, and I thought it would be cool to be able to do that whenever I wanted to. So I worked up to that very early as well. So it was a it was about being able to compete and do well at that first contest, but then also build these other skills that were just fun to do. And
Now,
then naturally, when you're good enough at that stuff, it'll carry over to everything else. And like I had a decent grip, but like I had a lot of bad habits before I started doing grip. Like the first thing I did when I got to a gym back in 2000 really was I would put a belt on, wrist wraps, I should say, and then I would have my straps on. And then I would walk around the gym and the straps would be hanging there the whole time. And if we were doing rows or pull downs or pull ups, I was using those straps.
mhm.
So like I had a lot of bad habits, but I think I also had a decent grip going in because my hands were really big. And like I said, I played sports like my whole life. So I had some, that athletic strength. I didn't have an insane grip. Like I came in sixth place out of like 13 or 14 people at that first contest. So my grip wasn't world class at
Mhm.
the beginning, at least not compared to that group. But very quickly over time, by 2005, I was winning national championships. That was 2003 in my first one.
And so, yeah, in a pretty short amount of time, you were able to build up to a pretty impressive grip. And one thing that you
Yeah, and
mentioned, go ahead, go ahead.
I think I probably could have won nationals in 2004, but my focus going in for that first year was not competition training. It was feet training.
Mm.
So I was working on things like 5'10s, 6'10s, 235s, 245s, lifting the blob, lifting the inch dumbbell, and all those like well-known grip feats, plus the steel bending, sledge levering, things like that. So that kind of like kept me from developing as a competitor for a long time.
And that you mean kept you from strongman developing as a competitor, or within the grip sport itself?
No, I was always very, very focused on strongman. Definitely always focused on strongman. And there were times where I didn't train grip for months, um, to any degree, unless it benefited the next contest I was doing. So I would generally do like I think probably on average 2 strongman contests a year. Probably do like a 3 month program leading up to those contests, and I won a lot of contests. So for the weight class, I think it was like a 265 weight limit or something like that. For that weight class, I was really good. I won my weight class in 04, 05 up to Boston, and then in Maryland I won that both years. And then in that contest that I talked about with the cash, I basically won it out of all the amateurs. The only dude that beat me was Don Pope. So I took that very, very seriously. I had well over 300 pounds on the log. I think my best was like 330 on a 12-inch log. I think my best on an axle with a jerk was 355 out of the rack. I lifted 400-pound Atlas stones back before anybody was doing 400-pound Atlas stones besides like the top level pros. 700-800 pounds on a yoke, on a Conan's wheel, things like that. Like long arms help on the stone, and I was able to parlay that into victories in competition.
Very nice. And folks, if you, for those of you who are listening, if you are not familiar with those terms that he just mentioned, just go on YouTube and look it up. There's some pretty impressive stuff, particularly because those numbers are good for pretty much anything. But to be able to do all of those, if you could just do one, you would be pretty impressively strong. But to be able to do all, it shows some very serious dedication. Now, we've talked a lot about like the competition side of thing, but you also have been a trainer for a very long time. And so most of the people you train, I'm sure you train, your fair share of athletes even now, but probably most of the people that you're training are people who are lifting, let's say like recreationally, because they want to get stronger, fitter, look better. How do you apply grip strength training into a training program designed for somebody who's maybe interested in just, cutting some flab, building some muscle, and just feeling more confident? How does grip strength fit into all that?
If it's like a general fitness type person, I do almost no grip training with them whatsoever. Maybe some forearms, maybe some like reverse curls or something like that. But like other than that, I just make sure that they're able to lift their like their deadlifts and do their major pulls without straps. We don't use a lot of straps. We don't. If it's something like a shrug, we're going to overload their hands in that way, then yeah, we're going to use Versa grips. But for the most part, for a general fitness person, no specialized grip training at all.
Yeah.
Just the normal, just subject them to some training of their hands through curls, rows, dumbbell shrugs, things along those lines. And then I actually work with a lot of wrestlers and football players. So then there's much more grip that's involved in those guys. With wrestlers, it's generally modifications on pull-ups. So I don't even know how many pull-up bars and grip implements that I use with them. It's probably like 15 or 20 different implements, and I change them up all the time. So they're getting hit from all angles with their grip. Plus, with the football players and wrestlers, we do a tremendous amount of work with very heavy med balls and sandbags. So I'll have them do carries with med balls and sandbags that weigh 150 pounds. They'll do shouldering, stuff like that. And I'm talking even my kids that weigh like 140 pounds, they're using a 150-pound bag. Like these guys are strong, and their grip is not a problem. It's not a problem. So, but none of that stuff is grip sport stuff. I don't have them do any grip sport stuff whatsoever. It's usually a thick bar type movement, because that's going to carry over just as well, even better really than a grip sport thing. Plus with grip sport, there's so much technique involved. There's no time for that. Yeah. There's no time to go over that crap. So I'm not having them do two-hand pinch. I might have them do some like plate pinching, some holds, or some dumbbell claw grip stuff where you like stand the dumbbell up and grip it on the heads like that. And I have a program, not a program, but I have like an approach to that that's standardized to make sure that they're continuing to improve and all that stuff. But I like to keep it to like more like brute strength grip training stuff, and not something that's going to be super technique intensive, because I only have them for an hour, and I like to year round. I have them doing strength-based movements, muscle building movements, as well as shoulder prehab stuff, neck strengthening, and the grip stuff. So there's just a lot of stuff going on. So I try to keep it more basics, foundational, and that brute strength type stuff, plus integrating some kind of grip demand with a pull. And I find that works much better than trying to, set up a rolling thunder or some kind of handle like that, because then you can train 10 dudes on a pull-up implement that is grip intensive, and you don't have to change anything, but you got to modify the weights for every single one of those 10 dudes if you're going to do a grip sport lift. So it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it makes sense because, I think about it like this. It's like the grip sport stuff we might look at as like the kettlebell snatch or the kettlebell jerk, where there are so many other things that you have to have in place before you can really learn it in order to do it effectively. And so, for instance, if somebody can't really swing or clean a kettlebell all that well, it doesn't make a lot of sense to try to teach them the snatch because the amount of time it's going to take to try to overcome all of the deficits that they have just built in from a lack of practice is going to make it impractical. So it would make a lot more sense to focus on those
Yeah,
things. And
practicality is very important. That's a good word. That's I try to keep everything practical,
yeah.
because of the limited amount of time that I have with them.
Well, and the other thing too is that grip strength training, even though a lot of people don't necessarily know all that much, it follows this a similar set of principles as to training anything else. So, for instance, if somebody wants to bench press a lot of weight, but they can barely do any push-ups, might make more sense to just get the foundational movement of the push-up down because it's going to answer a lot of questions that they would have about doing the bench press. And same with anything else, if your grip, if you want to get that stronger, you just need to hold on to some stuff because for quite some time, that's probably all you're really going to need to continue to get stronger. Now you mentioned prior, so basically to me, it seems like there's maybe we might say like three elements to grip training or three levels. So the basic would be just again holding on to stuff, not relying on straps for stuff like rows and deadlifts and things like that. Another one might be like the stuff that you do with your athletes, where it would be movements that are going to challenge. It's standard movements like rows and pull-ups and other pulling movements, but done in a way that's going to challenge the grip a bit more with maybe some thicker bar or a different kind of an implement. And then eventually you get into the grip specific stuff where the grip is not the secondary beneficiary of the exercise, but rather the main focus. So
Sure.
at what point do you think, let's say if somebody comes into you and they're kind of a beginner, or maybe they have some, uh, you know, some training under their belt and they say, I just feel like my grip could be a lot stronger. And I saw you, doing the, you know, two hand pinch with, a couple of heavy plates. I want to do something like that. What are some of the things you tell them that they need to do before they can work up to that sort of a thing?
You got to be able to pinch like 2 and 3 dimes together before you'll ever get 245s. So like the standard progression would be like 3 and 4 10s, and
Hmm.
then 225s, and then 235s, and then 135 and 145, and then 245s.
And this is with two
So
hands or one hand?
that's just with one hand.
Okay, yeah.
I'm just talking about with one hand. But like you can train, if you have enough plates, you can train both hands at the same time. The problem with two-hand pinch is generally the one hand is weaker than the other by far,
Mm.
and so you kind of get limited by that weak hand, and then the stronger hand continues to progress because it's taking over for the weak hand. So we usually train that stuff individually,
Makes sense.
but there's just to reiterate, like we're doing way more thick bar stuff than pinch plates. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, big
So
time.
yeah, for the application, you can work your thumb pretty darn good on a thick bar if you're keeping the implement level. The
Mm.
mistake I see a lot of people doing is they'll say they'll do, like they'll throw a fat grips handle onto a dumbbell and then row it, but then they've got their wrist backed up all the way to the plates of the dumbbell or the head of the dumbbell,
Mm.
and they're just kind of like totally defeating the purpose. If you're gonna do that, then if you're gonna if I'm gonna say cheat, if you're gonna cheat it that way, then you should be overloading it big time. If you're going to train it to truly strengthen your fingers and thumb, then you should try to keep the dumbbell level and your hands centered in order to get that hand strength emphasis.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And you mentioned too the importance of strengthening the thumb. And this is something I've encountered a lot of people who don't really think about the thumb at all. Like even if they understand, okay, I need to get a stronger grip, they don't think about certain things like the wrist, the thumb, things like that, or the extensors. So, what are some things in particular that you think, especially we'll say for elbow health, because this ends up becoming a problem for many people? what are some of the things that you think in terms of grip training that people really need to be focused on in order to make sure that they're both progressing in their strength, but that they're also getting a balanced development so that they're not as likely to run into these problems?
So you have to a degree, you have to incorporate some kind of balance in your training,
Mhm.
right? So you and what usually happens, the most common one is the tennis elbow. So it's the problems that you get on the back of your forearm here,
Mhm.
epicondylitis. It's the inflammation, the pain you have in this on that bone. It's called an epicondyle, and what it comes from a lot of times is a weakness in the extensors, overdevelopment in the flexors.
Mhm.
It can come from the shoulder. So if you have postural issues, you can have stuff that radiates or works its way downstream, and then you have issues. So you'd have to address the shoulder. But in the case where it's actual a balance issue and then an antagonistic balance issue, then you have to incorporate some kind of extensor training in order to address that problem. And like it's as simple as doing some rubber band extensions. So I have something that I use with people called rubber band battery, and it's a series of extensions with double extensions. So you'd extend your fingers and the wrist, and then extensions with rotation, where you keep your hand open against the rubber bands and then rotate. And I mean, I've fixed probably 30 people over the years within like 2 weeks just by doing that. Like if they haven't fixed it within 2 weeks, then they probably weren't doing the exercises I told them to do. And
Mhm.
I have rubber bands here in my office that I use with people. And you go to Staples, you get number 84 rubber bands. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh,
Number
amazing. Yeah.
84 rubber bands. That they're the best rubber bands to get. They work for just about everybody, men, women. I've got a guy training at my gym who had a stroke and he has trouble working those extensor muscles. I've given him a set, but this is like the third bag that I've gone through. I've given them to tons of people, and yeah, if they don't get better in 2 weeks, either they didn't do the exercises I told them, or it's not really a balance issue. It's got something else going on. They've got something else going on that they need to address that might be beyond what I can do for them in 5 minutes.
Sure. I'm glad that you bring this up too with the rubber band thing, because the a lot of times when people end up with joint issues and they'll see a physical therapist, they end up getting sometimes movements that are very helpful and exactly what they need. But I find that a lot of physical therapists, if they don't do strength training, they can't really relate to people who actually do strength training. And in fact, I remember when I was still at university, I had a literature professor who told me, I just happened upon him in the hallway. I had him previously, so I wasn't a current student of his. And we were talking, and he said, his elbow was hurting him, and I think it was something similar. Now, in his case, he wasn't a big strength fanatic. It was just because he typed so much that his forearm flexors got jacked up. And he said, yeah, my physical therapist has been telling me to do this stretch and that, like it helps for a little while, but then it comes back. So I told him to do what you did. I said, you just put rubber band around your fingers and just open it up, and keep doing your stretches and everything, but try that. And then I bumped into him 2 weeks later, and he's like, yeah, my elbow pain is gone. He's like, I didn't tell my PT that I was doing your exercises instead of hers, but
Yeah.
that's exactly it. Is quite often when you end up with issues like this, if it's not something like you mentioned where it's a structural issue or a postural issue where it might just be yanking on a nerve, it very well could be a strength imbalance. And this goes back to the importance of not letting yourself get too caught up in only allowing yourself to do certain exercises. You need to look at what's going to help you perform better. And a lot of times that means being a little creative.
Yeah, it's there's I've had golfer's elbow. So when I started doing strongman and grip, I got double golfer's elbow, so both arms, and double tennis elbow. It was terrible. I was taking like 8 Advil just to get through one workout. It was terrible. And I've had the tennis elbow probably 10 times over the years. I haven't had it since 2013 because I started doing the right stuff to prevent that from happening. But every single time I got it, I had to do something different in order to fix it.
Hmm.
So it's not, while I've had tremendous success rate, as well as you just mentioned with the rubber bands, It's not always an extensor weakness or an imbalance issue. There was one time, I believe 2006, I had a terrible case of what I thought was tennis elbow. And I had a contest, I think it was in August that year, and we had to do steel bending. And it was the second event in the contest. Usually, steel bending is the last event because it's the hardest on you and it wrecks your grip. But this was the second event. And I was actually kind of like afraid of what it was going to do to my contest because my hands, I figured, were going to be so tired after the bending event. But like I said, I had something terrible going on in my elbow. On one of my last bends, I think I failed the bend, but I was compressing so hard on this nail that I felt something pop in my forearm. And I thought I tore something or even broke the bone in my forearm. But what actually happened was, I believe my forearm bone, my ulnar head was like out of whack, and the bending put it back. My forearm was fixed for the rest of the contest, and I actually did better than I thought I would be able to do throughout the rest of the competition because I ended up putting that arm back into where it was supposed to be.
Wow.
So, those are, you got your bell curve where the center of the bell curve, like the extensor work is probably going to properly address everything. But then you got those outliers out in that smaller ends of the curve. And then you just don't know. You don't know what it's going to be. One side's probably something coming from your shoulder or some other kind of postural issue. And the other side is like, it's not tennis elbow. It just hurts in that area.
Yeah. You just got to do the Hail Mary and be like, let's hope this works.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, it was a lucky gamble in that case, because that's probably one of those things too, that unless you see a really good physical therapist or chiropractor or something, they may not even be able to detect it. They might just go with the usual suspect and say, probably just your extensors, you just need to work on those. But in a case like that, where it's actually like the ulna rotated improperly, that's causing the issue. Yeah, that's one of those like probably 1 in 100 things that most people are just not going to catch, even professionals. So very cool. Well, I'm very curious what projects you have coming up. Are they mostly grip oriented in terms of like, some of the info products that you sell or some of the workshops that you do? I know that recently you were promoting a workshop that you've done, I think a 4-hour one, and the video that went along with it. Do you have anything like that coming up? You have any new ebooks coming out, any new courses?
Yeah. So the one thing that I've become famous for or well known for is I'll do August of Arms in August, leg timber in September, Yoketober in October, and then November I've done like 3 different ones. So I'll be re-releasing November to Remember, Nuclear November, and Neckvember, just kind of at sale price in November.
Nice.
Those are like, I guess you'd call them evergreen products. They're always there. You can always use them. And
Sure.
then you just turn to those if whatever you want to specialize in for a month. But the idea with those programs is like you focus on one thing intensely throughout the whole entire month. And it's a fun way to just kind of add something to your training. I try to make them very plug and play, very, very add-on based. So you don't have to change everything else that you're doing. You can just implement this stuff as an additional way to get something extra out of your training. So I've got that coming up in November. I've got a really big project coming up called what is it called? I forget what we called it, but it's a video. It's an hour-long video and a program for bringing up your deadlift grip. And this is gonna blow up everyone's deadlifts. This
Nice.
is the biggest mistake people make with their deadlift is they think my grip sucks. I got to go train some thick bar, and then my hands will get stronger and my deadlift will grow up, and it doesn't work. That doesn't work. So I've put together my system that I use with people, and it's all in there, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And I've got a gripper training workout that I'll be releasing here real soon. I don't know how I'm going to possibly find time to do all this, but they're all like 95% done. I just got to release them. And the idea with the gripper training, it's called the crush factor. So people are notorious for trying to bring up their grip, but their technique sucks. So there's some technique in there. And then a lot of times they're trying to close grippers that they can't even set. So we're bringing up their setting strength. And, most people with a gripper, they can get it to about parallel or a little bit further than parallel. And they think they almost close the gripper, but there's so much more work to be done. So that's called the finish. That last part is called the finish. And the program focuses on that. So really, this is like a bare bones program. These 3 drills are what you need to do in order to bring up your grippers. I've got all kinds of other gripper workouts. This is one that I would say is mostly for people who are looking to bring up their gripper closes with a deep set. So people in competition, people that are doing certifications with block sets and things along those lines, they're really going to benefit from this. And I can't wait to get it out there. It's just a matter of getting the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. By the way, I got to say, you and I are on the exact same page in terms of use of puns and short-term challenges and stuff like that. So you mentioned Yoketober. I've got something coming out later called Backtober, just because I love to like the plays on words and stuff like that. So I'm glad to see that I'm not the only guy in the fitness world doing this and, like doing the play on words and the short-term challenges.
I only wish it was my idea. So like I wanted to do arms for 31 days because Dave Depew did it. I don't know if you know Dave Depew, but he's a pretty well-known name. He's a strong dude, man. He's mostly into arm wrestling and strongman, some grip, but I saw him doing it first and then I did it next. And I just called it August of Arms, which is kind of a cool name. But then someone else said, well, you should take the name of the month and modify it. And I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea. That's a really good idea. So it wasn't my idea to do that stuff. Other people told me it would probably be a good idea. It was just my idea to specialize on stuff for a month long.
Likewise.
period.
Yeah, no, I've got a couple similar, like Hanguary, it's a hanging challenge for January. February was another one that I was very proud of. I ran out of ideas with those eventually, and I was like, oh gosh, like I don't know what the rest is gonna. I did have a one. It was called Pec Timber, and it was just like grease the groove with push-ups.
I was thinking Pecsember myself.
So, I like it, dude. Use it by all means, because I have an alternative name for the challenge too. But Pec Timber, people didn't really, for me anyway. I think people didn't really. They didn't. I don't know. It didn't mix with them very well. So I just went back to calling it what it was originally called, which was 2 extra push-ups in 2 weeks. So yeah, Pecsember, anything you want, you should definitely run with that, because I think that you probably have some excellent ideas based off of what I've seen so far and what we've heard here. I have no doubt that people's pecs will absolutely blow up over the course of however long.
I agree. I think I get pigeonholed as just a grip guy.
Yeah.
But like, I do everything, man. Like, I have the worst chicken legs in history, but like, I do not miss a leg workout anymore.
Yeah.
Once I fixed my back, like, I love deadlifting. I love squatting. I'll do. I mean, a couple weeks ago, I did belt squats with like 450 pounds, and like, I am not shy about doing a serious leg workout, and I think, compared to most people, I can do more weight than them. But like, my leg development is terrible because my back has been injured so much over the years due to poor training, bad decisions, stunt lifting, and high risk activity that hurt me, that like I did have to skip leg day a long time just because I thought I was done, because I was just hurt so bad. And I didn't want to miss my grip workouts. So I was like, I got to cut something out. And that's what I ended up cutting out. So it is what it is. I'm 43 now. There's only going to be so much more development that takes place in these legs, but I'm trying, man. I'm trying my hardest. But like, the kids that come to my gym, dude, they are relentless. They are relentless about picking on me about my leg size. And I'm like, you guys, I'm going to find you in a dark alley sometime, and there's not going to be any fingerprints to trace. It's going to happen. So they got to watch how close they're standing to death's door.
Yes.
But I love doing all the stuff, and that's why a lot of these programs that I'm talking about are actually like more standard muscle building, powerlifting style training, because I do love that type of training. I'm just not known for it.
Yeah. The thing is, I think whatever you're known for, you've got to like lean heavily into that, because people will get into you for that reason, and then they'll kind of buy into you as a trainer, as a leader. And then you can also point out, yeah, but you know what, these are the other things that I'm using this strength for. This is what I'm using this, these abilities for. And like I said, I mean, I've known you for a long time as being like the grip guy, but I've also followed a lot of the stuff that you've put out about traditional dumbbell and barbell lifting. And I know that yeah, you're a dude who knows his stuff. So I've been very pleased to have you on the show. Now, if people want to follow you and maybe get on your radar, where can they follow you at social media? If you have any like free ebook or something like that people might dig, let us hear all about it, and I'll put a link in the description for those who are listening.
Yeah, so I have my main website is dieselcrew.com, and it's a bad website. I haven't updated it. Like, I haven't like brought it into the modern era of websites in years. So when you go to it, it looks like a spam site, but it is legit. And there's a search bar, and you can search for terms and stuff. And we started that site in, I think, 2006. Mm-hmm. I don't even remember anymore, but I think it was 2006. So everything that we've ever put up there is still available. And there is a way to get like a free ebook called the Diesel Files on that website. Don't remember how to get it anymore. I don't even remember. I'm the world's worst marketer. The worst marketer. I have thegripauthority.com, which is an instructional site for grip training, grip feats, feats of strength, like steel bending and stuff like that. That's $1 for the first month. Probably I'm most well known these days for my YouTube channel, which is just my name, Jedd Johnson. I think if you go youtube.com/grip strength, I think it comes to my page. I'm on Instagram. It's either Jedd Diesel or Jedd.Diesel. I don't even remember anymore, dude. I'm not even sure. Like I said, I'm terrible with this stuff.
Well, let me look it up, because I got my phone handy. You keep talking. I'm going to find out what it is, at least on Instagram, for the people.
Yep. Those are my main websites. I have an instructional like virtual coaching program that I do with people. So they'll join, we'll do a coaching call, I'll figure out what they want to work on, and I do weekly updates to their programming every week. I've just started doing like month-long programs that are written out, but I can tell you that I get a much better success rate with people on their goals if they do the virtual coaching, because there's so many variables that go into grip training. I'm talking about like the humidity on any given day can have a profound effect, like 5 pounds up or down, sometimes more, depending on the implement. Mm-hmm. So to lay out like a month of training at a time is kind of unreliable. So I've developed systems that you use. I call them triggers. So once these certain things happen, it's time to go up, or you need to go down, or whatever. So, but that's come from working with people since 2013 on their grip. And just, I found out very soon that for most people, especially newbies in grip, that you can't outline a grip program for people. It doesn't work that way. Grip is neural. It's not muscularly based. So you can't anticipate where they're going to be in 12 weeks. Mm-hmm. You just can't do it. So especially if their technique is bad and they're holding themselves back with that, if they're doing the whole like violent hip lock on a rolling. I just did a coaching call with someone like 2 or 3 weekends ago, and they demonstrated their rolling thunder technique, which first off, the rolling thunder is the absolute worst rolling handle on the market. And if anybody's considering buying a rolling thunder, I would say don't buy it. And if you do have a rolling thunder, then don't train on the Rolling Thunder. Train on a different rolling handle device, because that will make your Rolling Thunder go up better than if you train on the Rolling Thunder. But the story I was saying was, this guy was doing, like, you would think he was doing kettlebell swings, the way that he was violently locking out his hips. And if you're training your grip like that, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It has to be more methodical, more deliberate when you're doing a grip lift. Otherwise, that speed requires you to squeeze onto it much, much harder. And generally you overcome the friction that you're able to get on an implement when you incorporate speed, and your weights won't ever go up, because the implement's going to start ripping out of your hand. Yeah. So, it's just something that I've seen working with countless individuals. So I've probably trained between 100 and 200 people since 2013. So call it 10 years. I mean, between that and coaching calls, and I see what they're doing and their technique is all messed up. And I'm like, dude, we have to fix this stuff first. It's like anything else. You have to start with technique, but the technique stuff, the intricacies of grip sport, it's such minutia. And if you don't address these things, it's hopeless. It's just hopeless.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I mean, you pointed out the grip is like purely neural. So a bad night's sleep, a little extra humidity, anything like that can have a huge difference. Whereas it might just be like a slight movement of the needle on a lot of other movements, where it's like, this feels like, a little tougher than it did last time, but I can still manage. When you're dealing with these little, appendages that have no muscles in them and are just completely reliant on a variety of other intricacies. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Well,
there's what drives me crazy is there's a couple other coaches in the grip realm, and I don't know how this is possible, but it's like they don't understand this stuff. They've got, like, there's this one guy, I look at the videos he puts up on his grippers, and he's doing like sets of 10 with grippers. And I don't know how familiar you are with the rating system that we use for grippers.
Like Captain's Crush, like 1, 2, 3, etc.
Yeah, so like we have a system that we use, and basically one dude rates all the grippers in the world. Okay. There's a handful of other dudes that do it, but like, again, that bell curve, in the big part of the bell curve, this one guy rates all the grippers. So what you do is you sit a gripper into let me see, I'm restricted, so I can't move real well. So you set a gripper into this holder like this, and this is your top handle, and you hang weight off of it until the handles touch, and that's the rating on the gripper. So like the numbers that are assigned to Ironmind grippers, heavy grips grippers, those numbers mean nothing. The information that I was given was one dude squeezed or squoze the Captain's Crush grippers and said, "Oh, that feels like 195 pounds."
Really?
Yes. Yes. Oh, that feels like that's probably 280. That's what they did. So they assigned those numbers to the main 4 grippers, the 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the 0.5 grippers, they just average those 2 numbers.
Wow. When
in reality, I've rated number 3 grippers as light as, so a normal number 3 rates 145 to 150. All right, let's just say that. I've rated number 3 grippers as low as 135, all the way up to 161 or even 165.
Wow.
Number 3 grippers. So if you get, let's say you go to Ironmind and you're gonna buy 5 number 3 grippers. Every single one of those grippers will have a very similar rating because you bought them all at the same time. However, if you buy one now, buy another one 6 months later, buy another one 6 months later, those ratings could be all over the place. Which a lot of people say, well, that sucks. They should have better quality control. In my opinion, it doesn't suck, because what you have is you have a 135, a 140, a 142, a 145, a 147. So over the years, I've been doing this since 2002, buying grippers. I have 100 grippers. I have like 30 number 3s, and they're almost all different ratings.
Amazing.
Okay. So like, and even to this day, when Canon PowerWorks rates a gripper, they will put that up there. And if someone needs a gripper in that range, they will buy that gripper within a day. Like as soon as those grippers are listed for sale, they're bought because people are trying to fill those holes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're trying to bench press with 135, 225, and 315, and you never change the weights. And that would be who in the world would ever do that? Nobody.
Yeah.
So you can't build your crushing strength efficiently with just a 1, 2, and a 3. Even the 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. That's not enough. The best way to go about it is with several grippers, several of those grippers with different ratings, plus buying grippers from other companies and having them rated, because the system works for all the grippers. And it's very, very accurate. And there's going to be some cases where there's outliers where like a 145 is going to feel easier than a 140, but those are few and far between. It's worth the risk to get your grippers rated. So if there's anybody out there that is training grippers right now, I would say you have to get at least the grippers that are in your working range rated, and Canon PowerWorks will do it. You send them your gripper. I think it's only $5 or $10 per gripper, and then they send them back to you. Really quick turnaround. You generally have them back within a week, I would say. And, it's just the best way to do it. It's just the best way to do it. If you're going to do something, you should do it right. That's what my dad always said. That's why we were out in the yard every single day doing batting practice. But so often people just, they don't buy into that. And it's the absolute best way to do it.
Yeah.
So I got off on a tangent there. I don't even know what we were talking about.
No, I think that's great, because a lot of people think, oh, you know what? I want to have a stronger grip. I'm going to go out and I'm going to, buy some grippers and I'm just going to squeeze them. And then periodically they might be like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll try this Captain's of Crush. I heard good things about the Captain's of Crush. But if there's really no way to know for sure that what they're doing is even moving them meaningfully into the direction that they're after, they might just end up spinning the drain for a really long time. And never real, and just think, oh, I'm just genetically, I can't do it. And it has nothing to do with genetics, but everything to do with the equipment.
You have to think about stuff like this. Are you trying to get stronger hands, or are you trying to close big grippers? Or are you trying to close bigger grippers than what you're closing now?
Yeah.
So if you're trying to get strong hands, I would say ditch the grippers. I would say it'd be much better off for you to train thick bar to get strong hands. Okay. If you're trying to, if you bought all these grippers and you can close up to the 1.5, which is really common for like a person that's like just highly interested in strength, they usually get stopped at the 2. In order to get past that 1.5, it's going to be imperative to learn the proper technique. And it starts with how you put the gripper in your hand. So if you put the gripper in your hand wrong, or if your set is bad, forget it. You're not going to close that gripper. Like most people will never close a number 2 because of their set and their placement. It's just all there is to it,
Yeah.
So it's like most people won't squat 500 pounds or deadlift 500 pounds. They just won't reach that point. And it seems crazy to say that the number 2 is that equivalent, but it is, because people's technique is so bad most of the time.
Yeah. They kind of look at it, I think, like Antonio Banderas' character in The Mask of Zorro, when he's asked by his mentor, the original Zorro, Anthony Hopkins, do you know how to use a sword? He goes, of course, the pointy end goes in the other man. There's a lot more detail than just poking somebody with a sword if you want to get good at a sword fight. Likewise with the grippers. One thing I checked on Instagram, it is jedd.diesel. So JEDD.diesel. So for those who want to follow him, that would be the way to do it. Not jedd.premium or jedd.ethanol or any other kind of fuel. It is diesel. People must know this. They must know this. Diesel. So yes. Well, Jed, thank you very much for coming on the show today. It was a real pleasure chatting with you.
Listen, I had a great time. If you'd ever want to do it again, we can talk about something like more detailed related to a different form of training, or we can go into more detail on grip sport. I'm always looking to get more people involved. I'm running a contest on August 29th here in Pennsylvania. Right now, it's set to probably only have like 5 or 6 people, and I've usually got 12 to 15. But the people that come from New York City, Long Island, New Jersey, those guys are going to run their own competition in North Jersey.
Mm.
So I've right now got a situation where my group is going to be much smaller. So if anybody is interested in coming to a contest, this would be a really good time to do it, because you'll be able to get a little bit more help with your starting weights, your attempts, a little bit technique, stuff like that. We'll be able to work with you on that stuff. So it's a really good opportunity. Most people are like, well, I'm not really strong enough to do a grip contest. That's total bull. Like, you're strong enough now. The most important thing is to get started.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking to get more people involved. I'm only going to charge $20 for the people that come and compete at this contest. It's usually more like $50 at one of my contests, but this is like a mega comp. It's going on all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So the barrier to entry is as small as it's going to get. You're going to get a lot of assistance at this contest. It's called the King Kong of Grip. I won this contest in 2015. I'm going to try to win it again this year to be there's only been one person that's won the contest more than once. And I'm going to try to be the second person. It's always my goal. I finish second and third like every single year. So it really pisses me off, but going to try to get it done. But again, this is the contest you want to come to if you want to get your feet wet.
Nice. Very nice. And when is that again? October?
That's October 29th. And I'm in Wyalusing, Pennsylvania. It's in Bradford County. It's northeastern Pennsylvania. It's a 45-minute drive from Binghamton, New York. It's about an hour and 15 minutes from Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's about 3.5 hours from Philadelphia, maybe shorter if you drive like a maniac up the turnpike. But they can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram. My email address is jed.diesel@gmail.com. Hit me up through there. I don't care. And we'll get you here, and we'll get you the information you need in order to do well and have fun.
All right. You heard it here first, folks. Keep this amply in mind. Jed, it's been a pleasure. We'll definitely have you on again in the future, and we will jam on more such topics. And folks,
yeah, brother.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Again, go to the links in the description to follow Jed. I highly recommend it. Very entertaining, very educational, and always a lot of fun. So
I'll tell you what, since I have no clue how to get people to sign up for that Diesel Files free report, I'll send you the link to it, and then you can just put it in that link box.
Oh, perfect.
And then it'll help people out that way. All right.
Absolutely. That'll probably be the easiest way, because I'm not much of an internet sleuth anymore. The internet's just too big. Back in the day, it was a lot easier to track this stuff down. So yeah, send me that link. That will end up in the description. And folks, as always, have fun and happy training.